Hello everyone. So in this video I'm going to speak a little bit about a news station called Russia Today. Um, for some time I contemplated making this video, but I was in two minds about it because I thought, well, if I make the video it may only give the channel more attention, which I don't want. But if I don't make it, then the same idiots will continue defending it. I'm a big critic of Russia Today. Let me give you a bit of the background. This is a relatively new channel. I'm not sure the exact year it launched. Maybe about 2005, 2006, something like that. 2007. It's a Russian channel, English language Russian channel. I'm not sure if they have a Russian language version as well. I presume they do. But the English language version has capitulated pretty fast. It's become one of the largest so-called alternative news stations. I can watch it because we have satellite TV and I can see news channels from around the world, which I believe is an advantage because I can weigh up and compare different stations. I have a lot of different channels. I have BBC, of course, CNN, Fox, Al Jazeera. We used to have Press TV. It got banned in the UK, rightfully so. NDTV, CCTV9, lots of different channels on Russia Today. Now, I used to think Russia Today was quite an interesting channel. It had some interesting segments, and at that time I maybe wasn't thinking so much in depth about some of the reports, and I thought, oh, it's just interesting. It's another news source. I can get some information. But over time I started to notice something about RT. I'll just abbreviate this to RT for simplicity purposes. I began to notice that a lot of their reports were very focused on the United States and very focused on Britain and very focused on the West in general. France, Israel, if that's arguably considered West, but anyway, especially the United States and Britain. And I began to notice there's something interesting about this because all of their reports seem to be negative. Over time, I've looked at this and I've done a bit of background research. It turns out that Russia Today is pretty much an organ of the Russian government. So their claim to be an independent, unbiased source of news is rubbish. What concerns me is that many people believe it is. There's many people who clearly have issues with the United States, will use RT as some sort of justification, as some sort of valid source. And they will use it and quote it and put links to it. And this really frustrates me because, in my opinion, RT is a complete disgrace to journalism. It's a new Pravda. They make many, many reports about Britain and the US, and I would say, without exaggerating, about 90% of those reports are cynical or negative. I can honestly say I am yet to see an RT report on the US or Britain that has positive overtones. Whatever the issue, they have to find some sort of controversy behind it in order to try and present the US and Britain in a bad way. Meanwhile, they ignore the many problems that Russia faces. For example, the many cases of disappearances of journalists critical of Vladimir Putin. They ignore the corruption in Russia. They ignore the numerous examples of human rights abuses in Russia. And you can guarantee whatever the British or American position is, and it isn't always the same, but whatever the respective positions are, RT will take a different stance just for the sake of it. Now, in my opinion, an independent, unbiased news source should be critical of every government, should be prepared to make scrutiny of every government. And I have no problem whatsoever with RT making scrutiny of Washington or London. That's completely valid. In fact, the BBC does that as well. So does CNN. You might not believe that, but they do, actually. But anyway, I'm not here to defend other channels because there's no such thing as a perfect news channel. The BBC is riddled with flaws and so is CNN. So I'm not here to defend them. The reason I'm focusing on RT is because it is growing fast, and I am concerned that a lot of people don't realise that this is not an independent channel. It is basically an organ of the Russian government. It's part of the Russian state system. It's not an independent news source. Now, the BBC has many faults, but at least it's independent from government. It's often critical of the ruling party. So it has many faults, but at least it's independent. RT, the reason I'm focusing on RT is precisely because it isn't independent. And that automatically makes it unreliable, because it shows that they will have a political agenda. And that political agenda is quite obvious. RT has a Russian nationalist agenda. They will always, I've seen reports, for example, where I think it's called On the Street, where the reporter walks around New York City and she tries to find sort of cynical views. I'm sure they will airbrush the positive views or just not include them. So it's obvious that they're editing down information. They will interview many American academics, but they will never interview mainstream figures. They will never interview American politicians. They always interview fringe, leftist sort of people who are going to be critical of the US government anyway. So this really is not an objective news source whatsoever. And if they start making reports critical of Putin, then I will believe that they're a fair news source, but they're not. They're a Russian propaganda machine, essentially the new Pravda. And it worries me that people seem to think Russia today is some sort of moral crusader. Oh, by the way, Julian Assange, Mr. WikiLeaks, I believe he lost all credibility when he joined RT. For him to claim to be an independent journalist trying to seek truth, well, I believe Mr. Assange has lost all credibility because, again, his criticism is selective. He wants to expose Western government secrets, but he has nothing to say about the Chinese or the Russians, who have just as many secrets as the US or Britain. Now, why is that? If you claim to be an independent journalist, then you do not take political sides. You simply report the news as you see it. You do research. You ask tough questions. And that's all completely valid. And let me make this clear again. I have no problem with any channel being critical of American and US and British policy. In fact, I want them to be, because that's very important. But what I don't want is a channel basically has an obvious political agenda, is so one-sided it's laughable. I mean, anyone that really thinks RT is balanced, you're kidding yourselves. And I honestly believe there are people who are just anti-American, who use RT as a way to kind of legitimize their anti-Americanism. They thought, oh well, this news channel says that, therefore it must be the case. But they don't really care about the truth. All they care about is vilifying the United States as a country. In every sense, it doesn't matter what America does, they're always wrong. Always. And that is the mindset of these people. And it's the same attitude to the United Kingdom. And to some extent, France. Their attitude is basically, we're right, you're wrong. That is not professional journalism. And, you know, they have some audacity. I remember there was one of the RT reporters, I think, again, I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact sort of name of the spin-off, but it's part of RT, and her job is to go around the streets of New York asking questions of New Yorkers. She was asking about media independence in the US, and I thought that is so hypocritical, coming from RT, coming from a channel that never criticises Putin, coming from a country where anti-Putin journalists, or at least journalists who have been critical of Putin, somehow disappear. For her to question American media independence is just laughable. And like I say, I'm not here to defend American media. You know, I think Fox is a complete joke. I think Fox is a mouthpiece of the Republicans. Fox is a complete joke. But RT is, the reason I'm focusing on RT is because more perhaps than any other channel, its bias is so obvious and so in your face. The Russian nationalism is so in your face. They once featured this thing whereby Western media is always vilifying Russia. Well, what the hell are they doing with the West? It's just it's just so hypocritical, and I really do pity people who think RT is some sort of valid, unbiased news source. The truth is, there is no news source, no news network that is absolutely perfect in this regard. None. But it concerns me that people who are critical of the BBC or CNN are then resorting to RT because they have a political agenda, usually a very left-wing political agenda, and they want to legitimize their political position, and therefore they'll use this news channel to do so. But RT is not an independent, neutral source. It really, really isn't. And it isn't even just marginally one way. It's so obviously biased. It's just, it's in your face how biased and ridiculous this channel is. Um, and the network also has a history of xenophobia, deep xenophobia. Some of their leading executives have used terms like "we will effing promote our effing agenda and no one can stop us," and they have made their feeling very clear behind closed doors what their agenda is, which is a Russian nationalist agenda. And basically, I think it's a disgrace. And I really do sympathise with. I pity people who genuinely believe it's some sort of valid news source. When I look at RT reports, I automatically think, I can't believe this. I'm sorry, there's an advertisement going on in the background. Advertisement going on in the background. But RT has a nationalist agenda. It has an agenda of vilifying the US and Britain without any objectivity whatsoever. And you just have to look at some of the comments of the people who watch it. This is all part of the Zionist world plot to take over, etc., etc. Oh, the Jews are taking over America, etc. There's deep anti-Semitism among RT viewers. There's many Islamists strongly support the channel, not surprisingly, given that it's a mouthpiece for just about every Islamist movement. It's a joke. And for people to think it's a valid news source, I don't believe there's any perfect news source actually. I believe some are better than others. The reason I'm focusing on RT is because its bias and its lack of professionalism is so glaringly obvious. They will interview Americans, fringe figures, who have a certain left-wing agenda. They won't interview, it's just a joke. And I strongly support legitimate scrutiny of the British and American governments. I want to make that clear. What I don't support is unobjective scrutiny whereby it's entirely one-sided. And if they're going to present themselves as an objective, researching sort of news channel, then they should start in their own backyard, because Russia is riddled with corruption. Russia has serious human rights abuses, and press freedom in Russia is a major issue. So they should start in their own backyard. It's a joke. And I'll just throw a bit about Press TV into this as well. Exactly the same applies to Press TV, which is a mouthpiece of the Iranian regime. Press TV, I'm pleased to say, got kicked out of the UK recently for their shameless, completely biased reporting. And both channels have a history of basically being cheerleaders for the respective regimes. And I just think it's a joke. And if you really believe these are valid news sources, then I pity you. I really do. I don't believe there's any perfect news channel. But RT is possibly the worst because its bias is so glaringly obvious. I think Fox News is crap as well, by the way. So just in case anyone say, oh, you support... No, I think Fox News is rubbish as well. The BBC and CNN, I believe, are better, but they still have numerous problems. I can think of many, many ways to criticise the BBC. So don't make the mistake of believing I'm particularly in favour of any news network. But RT is its bias is so glaringly obvious. Its nationalist agenda is so glaringly obvious. I think people need to be very wary when they believe what they hear on RT, because there's no objectivity whatsoever. Okay, rant over.